trying a new background today. I'm sitting in my office and I've got sort of stuff over this shoulder and stuff over that shoulder. That's the workbench. I'm actually sitting at my desk. And we were talking last time about how everything is quite complicated and I'm getting more and more confused by it. I put up a couple of shorts, which I didn't really understand, but I put up a couple of shorts the other day there. One of them got very few views. Whether that counts for anything or not, I still don't really know. But the other one went through the roof, or at least, over 1,000 views in an extraordinarily short period of time. And what it seems to suggest, and I might be stating the obvious here, but what it seems to suggest is that if you have the right keywords, then you're going to get more views. And that kind of surprised me because I'm used to being honest. And I think that maybe by emphasizing some of the things that are perhaps only tangentially involved in whatever it is you're doing, you may well be able to create a sort of situation that's maybe not strictly true. I'll have to puzzle on that a bit more whilst I go on. We were out the other night with a couple of pals. We do a catch-up dinner, hadn't been out for ages and ages. One of them is somebody that I used to work with years and years ago, and the other one is someone that we both worked with a few years later than that. But we had a photograph taken, and I might try and post it, but the accumulated age between the three of us was over 200 years. I was absolutely staggered by that. We first met as a group, and this will kind of date it if anyone has any interest in cars. We first met as a group in a studio not far from where I am now in Dubai. And we were photographing cars for a brochure for the Chrysler K series cars. So the Dodge Acclaim, I think, or I can't even remember, it was so long ago. Razor-edged, boxy things, quite small. And the three of us had been involved. I think I was art directing. I think one of the guys was the client or the client's representative. And the other guy was the photographer. And we started reminiscing about that the other night there over some Japanese food. And it was quite staggering to think that over 200 years between three people. It kind of illustrated to me that I need to be very careful as I get older about forgetting things. Or, more pertinently, perhaps telling stories more than once. I've got a pal who visits from time to time and often brings friends of his to visit. I've got quite an interesting house, I think. There's lots of things, as you can probably see over my shoulder, there's lots of things that I do and lots of stories to tell. But he has now developed the habit of holding up a number of fingers, just randomly. No one quite understands it, but generally that would mean I've heard this story 4 times, or I've heard the story 6 times. And so you're never really very sure whether you've told the story before or not. And at this juncture, I would certainly suggest that anyone who's heard any of the stories before, or as I progress through this experience, starts to hear more stories or hears stories again, just put your name in a comment and put a number in it, 3 or 2 or 1, or if it gets far enough away, 6, and I'll try not to tell the stories again. Another friend has someone who stands behind the person that he's talking to and does that, which it is taken to mean to shorten the story. We've heard it all before. And I think as you get older, it's inevitable that those sort of things happen. Your mind also takes on a kind of grasshopper status. And I was talking to someone again this morning about places we had been, not together, but separately, and how strange the memories were that came popping out of the filing cabinet, completely unrelated to anything that was being said or done in the moment, but just sparked a whole load of stuff. And the one this morning reminded me, kind of like this whole redoing YouTube or restarting YouTube, is a bit of a bucket list thing for me. I had some bucket list experiences in Eastern Europe. I don't even remember how many years ago, probably 30 now. It was when Yugoslavia was still Yugoslavia and hadn't been broken up, and was still, I think, communist, or at least communist influenced. And I'd been on a rally. I was driving the chase car for a rally that the Toyota team Middle East, with Mohammed bin Sulaim as the driver, the guy who is now head of the FIA, incidentally. And Mohammed was the driver, and I'm not sure who our navigator was at that time. Anyway, we were doing this as an extra round of the Rally Championship in Europe. We'd flown over to Ljubljana in what was then, I think, generally considered to be Yugoslavia. Not sure which part of that area it's in now. And it was very beautiful, but it was extraordinarily inexpensive. And I thought when we arrived I should get some money changed, because I didn't know what expenses I was going to have. And I thought maybe $100 would be enough. And it was remarkable, because I sort of proffered this $100 at the money exchange, and the guy gave me a kind of slightly odd look and then disappeared. And he came back and came out from behind the glass counter with what appeared to be a shoebox full of money. And I suddenly had all of these local notes. The currency was obviously some bizarre level. And I should have kept some of it and made a Monopoly set, I suppose. But it was hugely different from anything that I had kind of expected as an exchange rate. And I got to use the money because I couldn't take it back. It wasn't going to be exchangeable either at the airport going out. They didn't want it back in exchange for foreign currency, obviously. And it wasn't going to be worth anything coming out, because nobody would recognise the currency on the basis of its value. So I thought, well, I might as well get it spent. And it was only $100. Only $100, he said in his retirement. But I got to do two bucket list things with that. All of the rally team that we were with, and quite a few of the other rally teams, were all staying in the same hotel. And I think that had been kind of arranged, that all the incomers, all the kind of foreigners, were being kept in a place where they could be kept an eye on. Anyway, we were all in this hotel. And there was a bar in the hotel. And my first bucket list thing was to go into this bar and just say, drinks for everyone. Serve everyone, and to have one yourself. And I've never been able to do that before or since, but I thoroughly enjoyed that experience. And the second one was jumping into a couple of very old Mercedes-Benz taxis in our team to go somewhere else for a meal. And the first taxi took the guys and took off like a dingbat. And by the time we got into the second taxi, the first one was kind of disappearing round corners. And all we could say to the guy was, follow that cab. And of course, that then started what was like wacky races through the streets of Ljubljana to get to this farm that we had arranged to have dinner in, or we thought we would go and have dinner in. We got there and the place was full. There was about 10 or 12 of us. And the place was full. And they said, no, don't worry, we've got a wedding on. We managed to work out with the translator. They had a wedding booked for that night. The place was absolutely chock-a-block. But they said, don't worry about it. And they set a table for us in the yard outside the kitchen. And we had hams, and we had freshwater shrimps, and we had roast potatoes, and we had the most amazing meal, and more bottles of wine than was really decent, and then loads of this local schnapps. And it was about, I don't know, 30 quid or something. It was ridiculously cheap. And it was, again, a bucket list thing where you just go in and eat as much as you can and don't worry about what it's going to cost. And the quality of it was superb. After the rally was over, the team manager and I were staying on a little bit longer for some reason that I can't recollect now. Maybe we were making sure that all the vehicles and things were being packed away and that stuff was being shipped properly. The rest of the team had gone out. We were there. We drove to Tito's Palace, and this was a place, up on top of a mountain overlooking a lake. It was just absolutely stunningly gorgeous, and had afternoon tea, just tea and cream cakes and salmon sandwiches. A very British afternoon tea in the middle of this Eastern Bloc country, and that was quite a surprise. But I was kind of reminded of that this morning when the subject was just raised, and it was one of these really strange things where the concept comes out of left field and you suddenly start sparking all this, memorabilia. And I need to be careful that I don't run off at a tangent, as indeed I probably have already, telling a story that ends up nowhere but a dead end. And I'm thinking that this one sort of does a little bit. We did quite a few rallies in Europe in various cars with Toyota. We were in Turkey. We did one in Turkey. We did one in Cyprus, different cars. And they all had their little idiosyncrasies. I remember that we didn't have a servicing facility in terms of a garage in Turkey. So we were kind of servicing in the hotel car park. A couple of vans, car in the middle, a little bit of an awning over the top, trying to keep things going. And it all looked perfectly innocuous, although it was in a car park outside a 4-star hotel. But I heard a noise. There was a sort of bell noise. I wonder what that was. Sort of went over to have a look over the fence. And there's a guy walking along the road with a bear. And where I come from, that's not a very common sight. And it was a guy with an ice cream cart. And he just had this bear walking along beside him. And it was just looking miserable. It was one of those things where you just thought, it wasn't miserable as in cruelty, it was miserable as in bored. And as I made eye contact with this bear, it looked at me as if it said, yeah, I know, it's a bear and an ice cream cart, move along, nothing here. It's just completely bizarre, and I've just been reminded of that now. And the one we did in Cyprus, we finished the rally early. We went out of the rally early because there was an issue with the car. I think it was a brake issue. It was something, or no, it might have been a gearbox issue, because I think we did have brakes, but we had no drive. And so we had to tow the car back from wherever it was we'd finished in Cyprus. It was quite high up in the mountains, I think. And then unhook the car, because on the way down, the car was faster than we were. So it would go off, freewheeling down the mountain with Mohammed driving it, left foot braking on every corner and trying just to keep the thing going like an absolute dingbat. Then you get to the bottom, we'd have to stop, hook it up, drag it up the hill to the next bit. I think we went faster down that hill than at any point we were under power on the rally. So it was quite good. That was all good fun. And then, of course, we had loads of stuff here. The days of cigarette wars We were sponsored by Marlboro, the Toyota team, as they were in Europe. And Said Al-Hajri was sponsored by Rothmans. And we used to have this bizarre situation, which I just learned to call cigarette wars. And there would be girls with umbrellas and branding and vans, and everything had to be branded so that the whole thing was cigarette advertising. And these girls used to walk around the car park trying to poke one another's eyes out with the points of the umbrellas. And you'd be the Rothmans umbrellas and that Marlboro umbrella poking at one another. It was absolutely hysterical. And every time we stopped, there would be a bunch of people out trying to get in front of press cameras with, the Marlboro outfit or the Rothmans outfit, and people walking behind interviews. If someone was being interviewed, let's say one of the Marlboro drivers, a man was being interviewed by someone would walk behind Mohammed where the camera was on him and walk behind him with, a Rothmans banner. It was all that sort of silliness. None of it happens anymore, of course, because the advertising is all changed. But it was just really weird. And as I say, the the subjects all sort of fell into place on our meeting the other night. There, as three old hands with over 200 years between us. It was quite good. We didn't have very much to drink, curiously enough, because that always oils the wheels and tells the stories. But it was good fun. We did have fun. There must be some other stories that I was planning to do today, but at the moment I'm going to stop because I'll get back into Kuwait, or I'll get back into something else that's just amazed me in terms of the ability to recollect. And I think when you're 70, an awful lot of stuff gets stored up, and it's probably a good idea to get it down onto video, if not in writing, before it all starts to slip away on its own. So on that note, I'm going to leave it for today until I can think up something else that might be bizarrely interesting. Oh, and talking of bizarre, I'll save the volcano for another day. I mentioned it before, but I'll save the volcano for another day, and maybe we'll do something on the workbench. Let's see where it goes from here. Thank you for being with me. I keep saying with us as if there was a collective. And that's just a case of getting used to the idea of how all of this works. And I'm not really used to it yet.